A thread by Carlos Osuita. Let's look at a deeply silly piece by Harvard professor Cass Sunstein that first appeared in the New York Review of Books. For some reason, it popped up on my landing page, entitled "It Can Happen Here" by Cass Sunstein. It's a very long opinion piece that you can totally disregard due to the fact that Sunstein doesn't address the characteristics of countries that are, or have become, authoritarian. Of course, this is all a transparent attempt to smear Donald Trump as a budding totalitarian. This particular lie is especially stupid given that Trump is forcing states to rely less on the federal government. Trump is loosening regulations. Trump is introducing freedom where there was none before. Trump gives his political opponents free rein. Trump is attempting to end ideological censorship. Trump refuses to nationalize private industries as Democrats demand. Trump engages with bad faith press more than any other president. The charge that Trump is authoritarian is pure psychological projection and lying. But those facts aside, we need to look at countries where totalitarianism flourishes. Which factors make countries become or continue to be totalitarian? I've identified 4 factors. The most common is a long history of authoritarian rule. That's true in almost all totalitarian countries: monarchies, empires, caliphates, theocracies. Any of the 3 other factors can exist along with that most common factor: racial and or ethnic homogeneity. Most totalitarian cultures are racially and or ethnically homogeneous. A racial, ethnic, or religious minority dominates a racial, ethnic, or religious majority. Iraq under Saddam Hussein, for example. Sunni Muslim Arabs controlling Shia Muslim Arabs and Kurds. A totalitarian country invades and conquers another country. Nazi Germany, the USSR, Red China. How many of those factors apply to the United States? 0. The U.S. will never be totalitarian. Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu took male children from orphanages and made a Praetorian Guard fanatically devoted to him. But the people overthrew him anyway. Russia and Red China are economic basket cases. Trump is using that fact to slowly change their behavior. Sunstein embraces appeasement. But why? During World War II, not a single German soldier was executed for refusing to murder Jewish people or civilians. For most of them, there weren't any negative repercussions. They were simply transferred. If you're going to warn us about things, you have to be informed and honest. This country just came through 3 catastrophic events in just 4 months: the pandemic, the economic shutdown, and nationwide domestic terrorism. Being Americans, our reaction is the opposite of what leftists expected. Cops are saying, "Screw this. Police yourselves. I'm done." As the mass hysteria builds, we're not seeing calls for a police state. Americans are instead preparing to survive on their own. If Biden wins and tries to implement the leftist authoritarianism he's promoting, everyone will walk away. And everyone walking away will be armed. They'll be former cops and military. They'll declare their town independent, and the federal cops and military will refuse to do anything about it. We can form autonomous zones too. We'll all live off the grid, and the entire country will go on a tax strike. Here's what happened when Margaret Thatcher imposed a community charge or poll tax in Scotland. As the amount of the poll tax began to rise, and the inefficiency of local councils in their collection of the tax became apparent, large numbers of people refused to pay. Local councils tried to respond with enforcement measures, but they were largely ineffective, given the huge numbers of non-payers. According to the BBC, up to 30% of former ratepayers in some areas refused to pay. The anti-poll tax organizations encouraged non-payers not to register, to clog up the courts by contesting local council attempts to gain liability orders, and ultimately not to attend court hearings arising from their non-compliance. In November 1990, South Yorkshire police said they were planning to refuse to arrest poll tax defaulters, even when instructed to by the courts, because it would be physically impossible for the police because of the large numbers of defaulters. The failed poll tax is what forced Margaret Thatcher to resign. Her successor, John Major, abolished the tax and replaced it with what existed before. He just gave it a new name. Americans will never choose totalitarianism. It definitely can't happen here. And of course, all the giant, pulsating brains of Twitter intellectuals will tell me in the comments that I'm wrong, but they themselves never heard of the 4 factors I mentioned above. Any attempt to impose overt totalitarianism here will come from the political left, and all we have to do to stop it is to resign en masse. We can outlast them. We just proved it by reacting calmly to 3 catastrophes in the past 4 months. Get used to saying this. 2-term President Donald J. Trump, the best is yet to come. I'll end with a brief observation about Frank Sinatra. He told mind-bogglingly racist jokes. Google Sinatra deboning. You should get an article written by a foam-spewing leftist named Nathan Thornburg. But Sinatra was a civil rights activist, specifically an activist calling for the full civil rights of black people. I'm not black, so I don't tell black people how they should feel. I don't tell anyone how they should feel. But should the civil rights movement retroactively give back all of Sinatra's funding? Is it time to ban him? While it's available, here's Sinatra singing about our future.